Salve, salve, galera! Bem-vindo a mais um PodQuest, o podcast da ZQuest. Hoje nós vamos continuar a nossa volta ao mundo, né? Mês passado fomos para a China e hoje vamos diretamente para a Itália. Estamos aqui com o Guido de verdade, não aquele Guido que vocês conheceram e tem até um certo trauma. Estamos aqui com o Guido, o estrategista da Azimut na Itália, que vai contar para a gente tudo o que está acontecendo, o que aconteceu da pandemia, como é que eles estão lidando com aquilo. Para isso, nós estamos aqui, precisamos trocar de idioma, vamos switch to English, né? Nice to meet you, good morning, Guido. How are you?
Fine, bom dia, everybody.
Bom dia. Silverio, bom dia, good morning. Walter, good morning.
Hi, Teco, good to see you here, good to have Guido with us. It's a great pleasure for all of us.
Guido, let's start with a...
Good morning. I just think it's a great point to always reinforce that we have this capacity at Azimut to be interchanging ideas with our team all over the world, and to have such a senior guy as Guido to help us and give us some light, especially on Europe. It's a privilege. Thank you, Guido, for being with us.
Thank you.
Guido, welcome. Let's start with a personal question. How did the crisis affect you, affect your family, affect your lives, your lifestyle, your day in the office or in your home? How things are in Italy now?
Now the situation is quite improving, of course. We had a very bad months in March and April. We had to stay closed in home, and we cannot even go to buy nothing, just to go around our home and nothing more. And every of one knows someone who is affected by the virus, and someone unfortunately has died. So it was a very bad period. But now we are exiting from the bad situation. The contagion is stable at the low level. We had the elimination of the lockdown almost completely. Of course, we have to go with the mask. We have to have some social distance and so on and so forth. But you know very well the situation because you are 2 or 3 months behind us. But I'm sure that you will exit the situation like us in the more or less the same time frame. I hope so, at least. So now the family is okay. Everybody is okay. I have a grandfather which was ill that is okay now. So I'm fine, really. And everybody is want to exit, and I don't know if they want to consume like before. Speaking about economics, because there is some fear around the cities, around the restaurants, around the cinemas, and so on. So this kind of situation is not normal at all. But I think that it will take only some weeks. Now we are going to the summer, only some weeks to solve the situation. The only problem probably for Italy is the tourism, because of course tourism is one of our most valuable system to go for GDP. And now of course we miss all the foreigners coming to visit our cities. Now the situation is open from 2 or 3 days, from 15th of June. Of course, it's too early to say if people will come and visit Italy again. I hope so. Maybe this year it will be a lost year for tourism, but it's the only one. Maybe next year we will come to the normality again. I do not think that we will go to lockdown like in March and April in any case. This is
Guido, I have. Yes, I have one question for you, and it's very related with what you just described. We talked with Stefano last month And clearly, I think that the approach between China and the rest of the world was completely different, both in terms of the beginning of the disease, the kind of measures that were taken there. And I think that Brazil and Italy, we have a lot of things in common. I think that we like soccer. We are very, we like to gather. We like to be with other people. So there is a very Italian style here in Brazil. And it's and as you said, Italy came to this crisis maybe 1 or 2 months after China, and Brazil is still, we are here in June recording this, is still in the middle of the crisis. What I would like to know from you is, first, how do you see the difference, how Italy and Europe dealt with the crisis when you compare with China? And you were saying about the recovery of consumption, tourism. Clearly in China currently we have seen a lot of good news coming from there in terms of manufacturing activity, even consumption. And you just gave some hope for us here in Brazil that things are starting to stabilize in Europe. I would like to know how you are seeing economic activity currently. How do you forecast the next quarters in terms of this recovery that we are seeing in a very different states around the world? Just to give some hints for us in Brazil, what could be the kind of recovery to expect here locally?
Okay, but now in Europe we are knowing the numbers of April, not May. Something in May, but most of the data now are for April. And the April was the worst month in the quarters, for sure. Maybe May, the first 15 days of May, but for sure April was terrible. We probably have seen the worst data, and now we are recovering. The good thing, I mean, in my opinion, is that we are recovering all around Europe, even if the lockdown were really different. I can say that 2 different things. First of all, the lockdown was very useful in order to not have the pandemic expanded, and we had to pay the price of that. But I can say that even looking at the US, for example, but in Europe here, we are looking for a sharp rebound, at least of the economy from the supply side. I'm not so sure, as I told you before, about the demand side, because a lot of people are scary, are changing attitude for the long run, not only for the short run. For example, I don't know if all the people will continue to go to the stadium, where the crowd is quite impressive, and people normally scream and go for every kind of problem for the pandemic. All the things that we are known that they are a problem for the virus, you have in a stadium, for example. If you think about that, you can scream, you can stay touch, you can embrace when you go for a penalty or something like that. So it's not a real place to go tomorrow, in my opinion. But apart from that, I think that the other activity can start in a different way, maybe for the first year, but they can start quite easily. And I have seen that now there is some compromise in Europe at the political level. We can accept some cases. We are in the region of 200, 300, 400, it depends on the countries, per day. It's not zero like in China. We had 0 cases for 3 months in China until yesterday or the day before. We cannot have 0 cases, I think, because we are not so harsh like the Chinese government, locking everything at the first case. It's impossible for us. And so I can say that for now, the experiment is going well. We can accept a little bit of virus circulating, but not so much, not enough to go for problems. And now, even in Sweden, for example, which is one of the countries without any kind of lockdown for the past 3 or 4 months, they have more cases than we have in comparison to the population, of course. But it's bearable. It's something that it is not a problem for now. We are looking very, very closely all the situation in all the countries. We are happy that now the circulation of people is permitted, and we will see in the next 2 or 3 weeks if this kind of circulation has been a problem or not. Every single week we can say we have a new progress. It's not something that you can say for the next 3 months. Every single week is important. Every single week we have some new information, and that's it. I'm not a virologist, I don't know the word, but I can say that they are doing a very good work, and our medicians, everybody is going to have a very good work. Now in the hospital, the situation is quite good. I don't know. I mean, for sure, now we are more informed about the virus. We know how to fight, not with the vaccine, of course, but how to convive, how to stay with the vaccine. Sweden, it's a case, but remember that, for example, in the Nordic people in Europe, the social distance is a normal way of life. Yes. It's not something new. No, they normally do not touch themselves, not like us that we embrace all day long and kiss and whatever it is. In Sweden, they are very, very careful. You cannot pat on the shoulder one people without any permission. For real, they will go hungry for that. So angry. I think that we know now how to stay with the virus, social distance, masks, and whatever it is. And this is, I mean, I think that the system in order to avoid the second wave, a very strong second wave. But as you can see, for example, in China now, it's difficult to eradicate the virus all of a sudden. It's impossible. We have to stay with it until a real cure will be found. I hope that it's not so. I think I hope that it is soon found. I don't know.
Let's talk about economy, people.
Okay.
Let's talk about the recovery of Italy, of Europe. What your expectative, Guido?
Okay. For the economy, first of all, I think that we will follow the Chinese model and not the US model. I explain in a minute. You have seen in China the supply side recovering very well. The production, all about the traffic, everything has moved towards the normality, while the retail sales, the consumption in general has been a little bit more cautious. Not so much, but it is cautious. I mean, if you look at the production, it's now more or less 4% now higher than 1 year ago, which is better. For the consumption, we are under 2 or 3% in comparison to last year. So some points less than the supply side. In US, we have the opposite situation. We have the production going a little bit cautious, Yesterday we had a little bit of rebound after a terrible March and April, while the consumption all of a sudden exploded, and we have the retail sales in US not really at the same level of February, but not so distant. I mean, I think it's only 10-15% less than the February level, which was a normal month. So I think that Europe will follow more the Chinese model. For now, the enterprises will try to reopen. Everybody will try to produce something, and then we have to say if the merchandise will be sold or not. I hope so, of course. The summer season is something that helps us, because in the summer you normally go outside the houses and go for shopping, go for restaurants, go for everything not in the home. But I'm not so sure for now. So I think that in the next 2 or 3 months we will come back to the actual growth. The third quarter will be a good one, maybe. Not a really good one. If you look at the expectation of the central bank, European Central Bank, for the whole year, they think about more or less that the Europe GDP will fall 10% or something like that, 10-11%. Or now we have probably has been fallen 20% in the second quarter. So for sure we will have a rebound in the third quarter and maybe in the fourth quarter, but not so much this year. And the unemployment will remain very high for the moment, even in US, but in Europe for sure. So it's something that we will have in 2021, and probably every measure that Europe can go and put in place will help us.
In that sense, Guido, when you look ahead, which region or dominant region do you believe will exit this crisis in a better shape? US, China, Europe?
Difficult to say. Normally, US is the quickest to exit the problems we have seen in the last 3 or 4 crises, and I think that they will go for sure best of in comparison to the others. But this time, Europe, which normally is a laggard, normally is a country where things happens very, very slowly, we can stay near to the US recovery, maybe. I think that the US, for example, will have some problems with the unemployment rate, which is very high. While in Europe, for sure, we have an unemployment rate quite low, because there are some different ways to protect jobbers. So I think that the distance between the US and Europe will diminish. I don't know how much, but it will diminish. But the US, for sure, they will be the first. Normally, it's always this case. For China, I'm not so sure that I know very well the situation, but they are a country where they are already experiencing a transition between production and consumption. I think they can have some problems in this kind of transition for now, because consumption is more difficult to do with all these kind of lockdowns every single week and every single case of virus. So I'm not so sure that they can go to 6, 7, 8% of GDP growth like in the past in the next 2 quarters. Maybe next year or the year after. Not for now, I think.
In that sense, nobody has really addressed the fact that Europe has already a very, very strong social net, whereas the Chinese people really have to save for a rainy day, because if something happens, you have no one to rely to. You just have your own savings, right?
Yeah, correct. We in Europe have the oldest system of protection, and it works really. We have the same situation in all the countries you can name with different names. Kurzarbeit in Germany, Cassa Integrazione in Italy, or other names in France or Spain, but it's the same situation. The job has been retained at the level of the companies, and you are not fired and then and then you have again your job. Normally, you try to not to not to lose the job from the beginning. It's easier for the companies to maintain the population working in the company where the salary has been paid from the government for a while. It's a better system, in my opinion.
I think that, Guido, one of the big differences that you just described between the US and Europe, and this will impact the kind of recovery that we will have, is that the US government has been managing to sustain the people's wage with public transfers, right? And this different labor market really creates some differences between the US and the Europe. One thing that I would like to have your opinion about is that clearly in terms of geopolitics, this crisis brings some uncertainties. Previously to this, we were having clearly a dispute between the US and China about who will be closer to Europe. Of course, the Trump's administration had some clashes with some of the European countries. And my question to you is, how do you see this evolving from now on? Of course, there are a lot of questions, I would say, about the supply chains of some companies, how the industries will adapt and maybe not be so dependent on Chinese factories. But of course, there is always this clash between the US and Europe. And historically speaking, they were really close. But in the last years, at least, there was some kind of distancing, and we were seeing China, including with Italy, with closer links. How do you see this evolving from now on, of course, from an economic perspective? And how do you see this affecting the European companies regarding their supply chains, if there will be some deglobalization as we are discussing, and there will be some internal production after all this stabilizes?
Yeah, I think that in general, speaking in general, the virus outbreak has accelerated a tendency that we had already in the last maybe 2 or 3 years, which is every single country, and for country I say Europe, US or China, not Italy or France, but every country, big country, has to have some deglobalization trend. It's probably not so safe from the economic point of view, but it's a tendency that we have to face. It started some years ago where, for example, Italian people who had opened some plants in China was complaining that the quality of the products was not as they normally do in Italy or in Germany, for example. This is one of the things that we have already seen in the last few years. Now, it's not only a problem of quality of the product, it's only a problem of transportation, of supply chain breaks, something that we have already we have seen in these months very, very problematic. So I think that some of the production abroad will come again in the national countries. And this is something that we will see if it is a good thing or not. From a political point of view, it's a good thing, I have to say, because it creates employment, even if the productivity is not a great deal in this case. Maybe the profits of the companies will diminish, but for the country as a whole, probably it's a plus in this historical period, because we have a great problem of unemployment or sub-unemployment, and every time we regain some possibility to produce inside, people will work, of course. And in any country we have the populism problem, no? Mm-hmm. So people who complain that abroad they will steal our job, they will take our money, and so forth and so on. And this serves to calm that kind of people and regain the control of the population from a political point of view. I have to say that I'm not so happy to say these kind of things, personally speaking. But I think it's a tendency that US has started 2 or 3 years ago with Trump, and all the others has more or less followed the same pattern. So I think that we will have some blocks, US, Europe, and China. But for Europe, maybe there is an advantage, because up to now we were not in the order of speaking about Europe, but France with US, Germany with US, Italy with the US, maybe not, but with other countries. And in any case, every country spoke for himself. Now maybe Europe can go for unity, especially now that the UK has exited the Union, which is, in my opinion, a good thing for these kind of things. Because, for example, UK was one of the countries that always put a break on our decisions inside.
So I have
without being in the EU, they were a little bit a pain in the neck, if yes. I can speak loudly. And now maybe, at least from this kind of point, this point of view, it's a better situation for Europe, which now can be unit in a lot of senses. And we can talk about the proposal of Germany and France, but afterwards, I don't know, but it's something that has changed very rapidly, in my opinion.
So that's the point. My graduation thesis on the university 30 years ago was on the European Union and the effects, especially of the German reunification on the European fiscal side. And since then, we've seen an evolution of the bloc, but the last 15 years have been at least very rocky. So after the Brexit and all the trouble that the UK is going through, the Brexit, one would expect that especially countries which are part of the euro would never think of doing the same experiment, because it's simply irrational. But we now have noticed that 42% of the Italians, at least at this moment, would like for Italy to break with Brussels. Is that the momentum where the European Union, led by France and Germany, will finally address the fiscal union? And can this solve the problems of countries absorbing external shocks in a heterogeneous way, so that Europe can finally start growing pari passu with the US and truly compete with those other two regions, Asia and North America?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's the key question, I mean. And I think, yes, I'm maybe too much optimist, but I think yes, for a lot of reasons. Of course, Europe as a confederation of states, like US. Now, for US, you think that people living in Boston are the same living in Florida or in Tennessee or whatever it is. No, they are different. And we in Europe are different. Nordic people has a different attitude in comparison to Southern people, Spanish, Greece, or Italy, or Portugal. And this is something that it cannot change. But until now, this was the real problem, because every single country in the European decision has a vote. Every decision in EU has to be made by unanimity, which means that every time Holland should be agreed with Italy, Germany with Spain, whatever it is. Every country has to be on the same situation, which means a lot of compromise every time. Now, and normally the German people were more towards the Nordic countries. And because of Germany, it's a very big country, the more important country, nothing has changed for decades in Europe. The bloc, the Southern bloc and the Northern bloc, with France somewhere in between, sometimes with the Northern bloc, sometimes with the Southern blocs. Now Germany has passed, we say, the Rubicone, the famous river that the Romans passed 2,000 years ago, and they went with the southern countries. They probably have understood that we cannot survive the virus and the crisis we have facing now if we do not go for a unit of Europe for sure. Mm-hmm. And they prepared a plan with France, very impressive, very important, which is not important for the quantity or for the quality, because, I mean, 500 billion euros, it's a very great amount of money, but it's something that it's not so important in comparison to 2 or 3 trillions by US, or even for China. They have put a lot of money in the economy. It's not the quantity, it's the change of attitude. Now, Germany says, okay, we can go for a plan, we can help someone, not because it's Italy, because it's France, because it's Portugal, only because he needs money for some reasons, for infrastructures, for sanitary new hospitals, whatever you want. And I give you the money, says Germany, not in because not in proportion with your GDP, but as much as you need. Okay. Of course, not in limited way, but as much as you need, which is some solidarity concept introducing in the Euro system. It's a very huge step, like the Armstrong step on the moon. Very huge, little step for the man, but a very huge step for Europe. So I think that Merkel has made a turnaround from, say, 10 years ago or something like that, where she were really in the northern camp, not in the southern camp, and now we can hope for a Europe, united Europe states like US. We can continue to go as a federation, of course. Mm-hmm. We cannot go for one country. Everybody has his attitude, has his habits, has his population do whatever they want. And for the fiscal union, you said, I think it's a very long way. Mm-hmm. Maybe, as the document from Merkel and Macron has pointed out, in certain places, like digital, like carbon tax, like multinational companies, in several places we can have some fiscal union, not in the all places, for sure.
You did that before. You started with the exchange rate mechanism. You created tunnels, and when the currencies started behaving more homogeneously, then you went for the euro, right? You can start converging, looking for the long run.
Yes, but the very big difference now is that for years we were asked for conditionality. You can have some money, but you have to do something. And the something has been decided by us, by Germany, by the Troika, by whatever it is. Greece was a perfect example of that. And Greece, now we know that has not managed in the better way in order to exit the crisis. So now, I don't want to say Italy can do whatever it wants, for sure. But we can have some new investment, new infrastructures, new money that not bear on our debt, which is already enormous, for example, and the other countries can do the same. So it's a very different way to afford the crisis in comparison to before. Very, very, very different. And I think the markets has been recognized, at least in a little part. The euro is going up, the euro stocks is going better than S&P, the periphery spreads are going down, and whatever it is. But I think that if the plan will signed maybe in July, not now, but in July or in September, and I say that because now it's the semester, now starting from 1st of July, it is the semester of presidency of Germany. And I think that Merkel will sign very happily the New Deal where the Germany is the chief. So we are...
When she's about to leave. So she can
with, so it's a better way to leave, probably. And I think that the plan will be signed in July or in September. And then we can have a Europe situation where the overweight of Europe can be maintained for a while, for some months.
This would be my other question, and I think that you just answered that, but just to get your feeling about this. So I think it's fantastic news, right? The key question that Walter has made to you and your answer and how we are dealing with this. So in the Azimut's portfolio, in your view as a strategist, you would say for us or for our clients that Europe finally could be a region that we should be overweight in terms of currency, in terms of stock. Your opinion at this moment, and mostly because of this fiscal situation that we will probably have in the coming months, right?
Yeah, you're right. Remember that on the long run, euro is quite undervalued for a good reasons, as you already tell me. Now we can go to the good exchange level, which is something good for foreigners who want to invest in Europe, for Brazilians people, for whatever outside Europe people can do. So you can have, in my opinion, some good performance from currency and from stock exchange, which is not so common, because normally when you have the your currency going up, the economy will suffer, and then the exchange rate, the stock exchange will go down or underperform. I think that for a decent period, say some months, all the portfolio around the world which have been underweight Europe for years, for very, very long time, should have some purchases only to be neutral. Mm-hmm. Just neutral, not more than neutral. Then be overweight, it's another matter of fact. But just to be neutral, it's a very good thing for us for some months. You have seen now very short period of short covering, and the Euro stocks has made 15% or at least 10% more than S&P. If the pact will sign, I think that this period can be for 3, 4, 6 months. And you have not to miss it because when people are neutral, then they can wait for another 2 years in order to go overweight, maybe. But going from underweight to equal weight means tons of money into Europe and into euro currency. And I think it will be something that it will come in autumn, maybe at the end of summer, if the plan will be signed in September, something like that.
Guido, here in Brazil, we will put money in Europe, in your stocks. But you guys, what's your view about us? You will invest in Brazil, buy stocks here or our currency? What's the humor of Brazil in Europe for investors?
We in Azimut are a very great pusher of Brazil, which is a great country in our opinion because of the all the production is diversified and so forth and so on. And now even the interest rates are low, so the yield curve is steep, which is a good thing for investors, and the all the currency has devaluated, so it's a good thing for exporters. I know that now they are exporting a little bit less because of the virus, but it doesn't last forever, of course. So I think that it's a good place to go. I think that the political situation, it's a little bit scaring here, not so much, but a little bit. And then, of course, you are in the hot spot of the pandemic now. So it's difficult for us to go all the money now in Brazil. Maybe it's a gradual path in order to invest in a good way in a place where, in my opinion, there is a good opportunity to make money. I'm a guy from fixed income, and I've never seen a country in, say, emerging country with a so steep yield curve. Normally, countries like Brazil, like Mexico, like Turkey, like whatever you want, takes the short-term rates very, very high in order to protect their currency. And the yield curve is flat, which is not a good sign for the economy normally. Where you have a curve where short-term are 2%, long-term are 5%, it's the better situation in the world for an investor. I know that I'm going to technical issues and I'm stopped here for sure, but I would say that it's a very good thing that Brazil has low interest rates now. Not for now, today, but for the medium and long run.
Guido, but it's fantastic for us to listen to you because, just one moment, Teco. Usually the foreigners are still very pessimist about Brazil. And of course, you are from Azimut, and Azimut is a great believer in Brazil, has been supporting us at EasyQuest for a long time. And of course, but to listen to you as a strategist, telling these things about Brazil and how do you see our yield curve, the opportunities here, it's very rare at this moment, to say the least. People used to think that Brazil is with fiscal problems and everything, and of course, as being local, we used to have a bias, a positive bias in our country. But as you said, we really think that Brazil is in a very good position, although with a lot of challenge, both in terms of the disease, but also the economic recovery. But as you said, for the first time ever in Brazil, we are being able to reduce interest rates, to have this positive yield curve, of course, with some currency depreciation, what is not that bad, of course, if it's controlled, because make our exporters more competitive. So it's a very different scenario, and I really recognize that the vast majority of foreigners still don't see it this way. So it's really good to have you speaking about this for us, for our clients, and and should be really good for you to speak for your colleagues in Europe about this.
I would try. In any case, you said the right thing, control the currencies. Because, of course, if you have the interest rates at 2 or 3%, you cannot afford the 10, 15, 20% of variation or volatility of the currency because it is too much. So the real problem, the real job is to lower the volatility of the currency. In that case, you are okay, in my opinion, as an investor.
Guido, send a WhatsApp for your friends telling about us, okay? We have 3 more questions, one of us. I want to talk about one question for you, Silverio and Guido. It's a philosophical question about print money. Is there no limit to print money around the world? We don't care about pay this bill in the future or how this bill will be paying. What's the new normal about print money?
Now, print money, it's an exercise that a lot of economists or countries has hated for years. Now it's the normality. I think that until the money remains in the banks, in the central banks, and it is not going and circulate around the country with the investments, with the consumption, and etc., there is no problem of inflation. Mm-hmm. If we can have some rebound of the economy in the next few years, maybe we will face some inflation problems. Maybe. But we can have the good thing of this inflation problem, which is the deflation of the debts. Now we have a lot of debts around the world. If there is inflation, the real rates will be negative, very negative. The real rates are the nominal rates less the inflation rate. Or if the inflation rate is, for example, 5% and the nominal rate is 2, the real rate is -3, which means that you lose money buying bonds, just in one word. But people normally doesn't really appreciate this kind of mechanism, and the economy is very happy to go with negative real rates. So there is some. I know that there are too much money around the world, but until they remain stuck and without any investment, it's not a problem. Then we will to face a new phase, like probably the 70 decade. In the 70s, the inflation were a problem. Now we have the opposite problem, going not in the deflation camp. We will see. I don't know who will win. Remember that if the unemployment rate is 10%, 15%, 12%, there is no possibility of consumption. You can have as much as money as you want in the central banks, but people who don't work has no money in their pocket to buy something. So there is no possibility of inflation now. Maybe 2 or 3 years from now we will talk again and we will see. Yeah. I remember that I was in Brazil in 1990. And I was shocked by the fact that you go I was in Rio de Janeiro, you go on the street and buy
coconut.
A coconut for 4 pesos, I don't remember the name.
At that time, cruzeiros.
And in the afternoon, I came back, and instead of 4, the price was 5 or 6 or 7. This is the real problem of inflation, but we are completely in the other part now of the world.
Okay.
No problem at all.
Teco, I would say that I agree with Guido. This is not a problem for the present. Probably it's a problem for the future. But I see that in a very simple way. If we have this problem, it's because we are having an activity pickup. We are improving the economy. and clearly the fiscal problem will be addressed by the GDP topic. So we will have inflation if things is getting better. Of course, we will have to address this at some time. We are thinking about this for more than 10 years, to be honest. Clearly, the type of stimulus that we are having for the last decade always brings this concern about when the inflation will come. And I think that it will come when the economy starts to recover very, very strongly. I don't see this happening, as Guido said, for the next maybe 1-2 years. But when it happens, and if and when it happens, it will happen for a good reason, in my opinion. And we will be able to address this. Of course, the fiscal problem that we will experience is something that's really difficult to address. But it will also be addressed by growth. The key point here is if we grow, if the world grows, if Europe grows, if Italy grows, of course, if Brazil grows, I think that the problem will be diminished and not solved, but it will be addressed.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alexandre. And I would say that, of course, inflation is something that should be contained in the 2 or 3%, maybe 4, because if you go to 7, 10 or 15, it becomes a tax on people, especially the poor people. So it has to be contained in a normal range between 2 or 3%, no more than that, in my opinion. I know that you are used to have some more inflation in the last few years, but never like I told you the experience of the 90s, which was a very, very terrible situation for the poor people.
Okay, your last question for the real Guido.
No, but they are the experts. Just 2 points to add is that technology is pushing the population to live more, so we'll have to save more, and save more is consume less. Second, technology will affect employment all around the world gradually, so we're going to have higher structural unemployment, and all this is going to lead to a world that will grow in a lower pace for the long run. And after the stimulus of 2008, what we've seen is that because of income inequality, most of the stimulus was used for people to buy assets and not to stimulate production. So I really don't think that the problem is inflation. The problem will be low growth. And the country that understands, if Brazil did, that if you give some incentives for this money to be diverted towards production and create jobs, you will come out of this crisis in a much, much better shape than your
in any case, because we are losing all around the world more or less the 10% of our GDP, it's easier to start from a lower base in order to grow. It's like after a war, you have all the things destroyed, and then you start from a low base and go up and better.
But a war where supply wasn't destroyed. So for inflation, it's even lower because in a war, unfortunately, people die, consumption is destroyed, but supply is destroyed as well. In this crisis, supply remains stable. So you have extra supply relative to demand, lower prices, low inflation, low growth.
Your last question for Guido.
Okay.
Guido, I know you miss Falcão.
Yes.
So and after now that Totti has retired, when Roma will return strongly, and when will La Vecchia Signora Juventus lead, disappear? This era of dominance is very boring for us that love Italian culture.
I have to say that I'm more optimist on Europe than on the Roma soccer club, and I give you some anecdotal way to conclude my presentation. When I was young, 20 years, so in the 80s, when Falcao gave us the opportunity to win the Scudetto, the championship. In my countryside, I have taken a little tree, and I put in the ground, calling him Paolo Roberto. And he is already there, and he is now 40 years old. And I think that I cannot have another tree for my entire life. I'm sorry to say, but I'm not so optimistic in that camp.
One of the most elegant players I've ever seen playing. Fantastic.
Yeah. Silverio, the Prince, the last question for the real Guido.
No, I don't have any question. I just would like to thank Guido for sharing his thoughts. It was really helpful for us, for our clients, to have this kind of interaction. As Walter said at the beginning of our conversation, is something that from our investment team here is really helpful to take these decisions that we have to take. This helps our macro team, our equity teams, and I know that Guido has been a really close colleague from our team here locally. So we that need this kind of experience from a global group to support our investment decisions and to generate investment ideas for our portfolios. It's been a great privilege to have Guido, the entire Italian and European teams, as well as all the other teams around the globe. I think that what we try to do in the last 2 episodes of our podcast is try to bring this idea for our investors to show that we have a very strong presence around the globe. And we have senior and very experienced investment professional as Guido. It was a really, really privilege and a really, really pleasure to have you here with us, Guido.
It has been a pleasure for me, and I thank you, everybody of you, for the opportunity I had to talk with you. And I hope that I was not too technical, and then you can pass the message. Go for Europe for the next, after the plan, for the next 6 or 12 months. And you will make some money.
Guido, thank you for your time. Thank you for explanations. When you come to Brazil, Alexandre Silverio will make for you a 3 days barbecue in her mansion. It will be a great party only for you.
Okay.
We're not invited, Teco.
If I have the permission of my wife, for sure.
Bring her.
Okay. Thank you so much to everybody.
It's a family barbecue. It's for us.
Exactly.
Okay.
È stato un grande piacere. Grazie.